Morning, Birds fans. We appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. You got Mac, John McMullen, and Jody McDonald here with you for the next 2 hours. Johnny Mac, before last night's action, we already knew that the Eagles and Giants were going to do battle in one divisional matchup in the NFC. Last night, we found out the 49ers will be taking on the Cowboys, who put a pretty good beatdown on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night. So the final four teams are set in the NFC. And three of them are coming out of the NFC East.
Yeah. Who didn't have that, Jody, at the beginning of the season?
Yeah,
the powerful NFC East. Yeah.
I had two. I said the Eagles and the Cowboys would both make the playoffs. Didn't have the Giants getting there, and they'll be coming to Lincoln Financial Field on Saturday. But that says a lot about the division. Hey, we're only 2 years removed from it being the NFC least when the Washington football team, not the Commanders yet, took the division with a losing record. So things are definitely on the upswing of the NFC East, which is where the Eagles reside, where the Eagles were champion. What is the Eagles' schedule for preparation this week? We know it's a Saturday game, a night game, much to John McMullen's chagrin. So it's a bit of a short week, shorter for the Giants because they actually had to play last week.
Not short for the Eagles. Yeah, well, prep-wise, I guess, from knowing when your opponent is. But obviously they have a huge advantage, the bye week and staying sharp and being able to practice. So it's like a normal week, except everything's moved up a day. So it happened a number of weeks ago when they played a Saturday game. So Wednesday walkthrough becomes Tuesday walkthrough, and that's today. And Thursday, it has late in the season become the big practice of the week. That'll be Wednesday, and Friday is sort of the lighter practice that finishes up the week, and that'll be Thursday. So everything is just moved up a day from the preparation perspective, and they just went through this a few weeks ago. So, yeah, for the Giants, it's a much bigger deal because they had to play and, the emotion of winning on the road in the playoffs, and then you got to turn around and play another road game. Now, the road trip is not nearly as difficult for them, obviously, because it's so close. So that's a little bit of a positive, but yeah, that's a tough spot for the Giants.
All right. How about player and coach availability? Because, John, I said this yesterday, I said it, I'll say it the next 3 days leading up to the game on Saturday. The health of the Philadelphia Eagles will be a big part of at least my determination as to how easily the Philadelphia Eagles could and should expect to win this game. I'm already on record. I think the Eagles are going to win. Could it be a very tight and competitive game that hangs in the balance in the 58th minute? I don't know about that yet. Maybe. I'm not dismissing that as a possibility, but I'm not predicting it either. Part of that will come with how the Eagles look health-wise with some very key players being questionable going into Saturday's game. You guys will get your basic 15-minute look, and you can try and determine as much as you can by who's doing what out there on the field. But you're also going to have to rely on being able to just ask these guys questions, be able to measure their responses. What is the player availability this weekend or the coaching availability, if we can read between the lines on the Eagles' health?
Well, Nick is going Tuesday and Thursday. So, as I just explained, that would be a normal Wednesday and Friday. So everything is the same. Locker rooms open today, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, you're not going to get anything from the head coach on the injury front. If anything, I think he was a little bit more honest than usual when it comes to Jalen Hurts about not being 100%. I'm actually a little surprised. He's not going to be 100% through the entire playoffs. So he's going to be fighting through things. Lane Johnson's obviously having surgery. He's already confirmed that after the season. So he's fighting through some things. The biggest uncertainty remains Devonta Maddox. I would be stunned if he plays this week, but clearly they're keeping him on the roster for a reason. So if they win and they get to the championship game, if they win that, if they get to the Super Bowl, it's pretty clear they expect him to be at least a potential at some point. And who knows? And I maybe the most interesting one of all is Aaron Cepas. Not that it's a big deal, but he says he's ready to go. So we're going to see how he shakes out this week. If he's um, able to go at some point in the postseason, I would think it would be more later than this week. But those are some of the interesting injuries, and obviously the biggest two are Jalen Hurts and Lane Johnson. We kind of already know their status. To me, the bigger part of Jalen Hurts is what do the Eagles do? Do they protect him like they tried to do in Week 18? I think that's a problem if they take the zone read mechanics out of this offense. So I think that's the bigger question. Like, how do the Eagles react to the status and the health of Jalen Hurts not being 100%?
Right, but if he's not 100%, what is he? He's not 100. Well, is he 50? Is he 60? How do you even determine what those numbers mean? I don't know what Jalen Hurts is going to be able to do. I honestly don't. If you think you've got a better read on it, fine. I don't know. And yes, I think that will absolutely dictate. I think the Eagles want, anybody worth his salt would understand, the Eagles want to be able to call plays like they did weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, when Jalen Hurts was playing at an MVP type level and the offense was stone cold clicking. That's exactly what they're going to want. I don't think we'll have a clue as to how they're going to call it until they get out there on the field on Saturday. Do you?
Yeah, no, that's the biggest part of this because if they're really concerned and they want to protect him, yeah, it's going to become much more difficult. If they just play like they play, I think they're going to roll over this team. I think it's going to be a road apple on the road to the NFC Championship game. And I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I have a sense that they're going to go all out because it's one and done. And there's nothing to protect if you can't play the next week. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. The week of rest certainly helped calm it down. In a lot of ways, and we had Jessica Flynn on last week, a lot of ways, winning this game and going to the championship game might even be bigger because you don't have the extra week to sort of calm it down. Because Dr. Jess said, hey, you're going to get banged up in the game and it's going to be sore again. And then you got to turn around and play in a week. Whereas you had this extra week, it could calm down. I think Jalen's going to feel pretty good coming into the game. It's one of the reasons why I think Wink Martindale is going to go back to what he does, because he wants to hit the quarterback. He wants to blitz. Might even not get there. Might even give up a big play. But if you bang up the quarterback, and by the way, I'm talking in a legal way. I'm not trying to go back to the Buddy Ryan days. But they're going to want to hit him. And I don't think there's any question about that until we see it happen. Yeah, I don't know. And then that week after, again, you don't have the extra week. So you have the extra week between the championship game and the Super Bowl. You had the extra week between the end of the regular season for the Eagles and the divisional round. You don't have the extra week between the divisional round and the NFC Championship game if you win this game.
Agreed. And we probably are not going to know until Jalen Hurts gets out there on the field as to what level of play he is capable of playing with on Saturday. So it's going to be patience, Eagles fans. I know you all want to know right now. I want to know right now what the number is going to be, what percentage he's going to be at. The Eagles aren't going to tell you. Jalen Hurts isn't going to tip his hand. You're going to have to wait for the game to actually play out. All right, Johnny, I want to ask a question about just 2 weeks ago when these two teams played. And it's not a game that I want to put a lot of emphasis on because the Giants did play their backups. But one thing that does concern me going into this game, we know the Eagles put a beat down on the Giants earlier in the year up in New York. But when the game is over and done, you look at, why they're playing the Giants backups. How did they only walk away with less than a touchdown win? Giants get an onside kick in the last 2 minutes that could have really changed the outcome of that game. It was 19-3 heading into the fourth quarter.
It was 19-0, but heading into the fourth quarter, it was 19-0, and then he dropped 3 interceptions. I think people forget that. I mean, they were dominating the game. Now, you would like to finish it off. You know, if they had those 3 interceptions, they're probably up 30 nothing, something of that range. And, you know, nobody's having this conversation, but you pick up the end of the box score and you say, oh, that's closer than it should have been.
Right.
It really wasn't that close. I mean, they dominated most of the game. I said during the week, I remember after that game, I said, I never even got a sense, even on the onset, this team was going to win the game, this team being the Giants. I mean, but I get it. They didn't finish. They didn't put the hammer down, and people are concerned about it. I wouldn't be concerned about it.
And here's where I think the concern is legit. It's Davis Webb. And the Giants drove it down the field against the Eagles defense with their starters out there. They weren't pulling starters the way the Giants were. And they stuck it in the end zone twice in the fourth quarter of that game to get to the point where they actually got to go onside and look to steal the game. Where did the Eagle defense go wrong on those 2 giant drives in the fourth quarter?
Well, to be honest, I can't. I remember the Galladay play is just a great catch. I mean, great coverage, great catch, and sometimes you tip your hat to the other guy. And I realize he's been a big disappointment for the Giants. He had a great block in the playoffs. Now we're talking about him as a blocker that Brian Daboll brought up. But I mean, he made a great catch, and sometimes, you know, people aren't willing to say, oh, you know, that's a pretty good play by the other guy. They're getting paid too. And to be honest, Jody, I don't even remember the first one. Can you refresh my memory? It's been so long.
It was I wrote it down here. A 10-play, 59-yard drive at the start of the fourth quarter. Then the Eagles got the ball back. Did take some time off the clock, went down, had to settle for a field goal. Remind me, that's going to be my next question. And then, of course, they got the ball back, and, yeah, Galladay made the big play. But they had 2 drives in the fourth quarter, 4 touchdowns after they had scored a grand total of 3 points in the first 3 quarters. And that was a little disappointing on Eagles defense. You want to give Galladay credit. Yeah, it was a heck of a play. I certainly can sign on to that. You do have to give credit when the other team makes a big play. But the Eagles let them get into a position to make that play. And I'm just wondering if you remembered if there were any specific breakdowns, specifically defenses they were in that maybe they could learn something from and not have that happen to them again this week.
Well, now I'm trying to refresh. They did the Davis Webb one up the middle and kind of ran over Reed Blankenship for the touchdown. So I am refreshing my memory. I think they'll be more cognizant of Daniel Jones because of his ability to run the football. Certainly after last week when, you know, they want full just run it, you know, against a bad defense. So I think the Eagles are going to be on high alert for Daniel Jones because he's capable of doing that type of thing. Maybe not running over Reed Blankenship. That was a disappointing aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I won't cover that up. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I get it. A little bit of a letdown. You know, what was the score at that point? 19-3. I don't know, 3 quarters giving up 3 points. That's pretty good. You know, it started
and I'm going to tick Eagle fans off. Which is it? Glass half empty, glass half full. Yeah, they give up 3 points for the first 3 quarters, and then they give up 14 points in the last 10 minutes.
I will
is
say,
the glass half empty or is the glass half full?
Well, depends if you're an optimist or a pessimist. I will say it was a short field. You know, it started because of a bad punt. And I'm not going to sit here. Neither of these teams have good special teams. So luckily from that standpoint, it's kind of a wash. But, you know, Brett Kern is Brett Kern at this stage, and he comes in late because of injury. And it was a 29-yard punt. So that set the Giants up. No real splash plays other than Brightwell had a run for 17 yards. So that's a little bit disappointing that they let him get out. And then the touchdown. So it was all, short chunks, 5, 4, 1, 4, and then you had the 17. I don't know. I can't get myself worked up about it for two reasons. One, to be honest, from the Giants' perspective, if you want to take it from their perspective, doesn't matter. Those players aren't playing. Their good players are playing this time. And from the Eagles' perspective, if they gave up 3 points, they got a crappy punt from a punter that they probably wish wouldn't be here, but you got to make do. And they had a bit of a letdown. I can't. Overall, the defense played well, and you were getting to your next point about the field goals. Yeah, they didn't finish drives. They should have been well ahead. They should have been. That was a blowout game, and they didn't finish and settled for field goals.
Right. If you're judging it first snap to last snap, who had the better of the play, it was unquestionably the Eagles. But you're gonna have games like that. You end up losing if the couple plays go the wrong way, and they dodge a little bit of a bullet. Now it ends up they didn't need that game because the Cowboys ended up losing to the Commanders the next week, that week anyway. But had they lost that game and the Cowboys had won, would have been a whole different setup going into the playoffs. And here's one thing that does concern me about the Giants. You're right. In that game, they kind of chunked it down the field on that first touchdown in the fourth quarter. No big plays. Well, the Giant offense doesn't have big play players. They really don't. They don't have any wide receivers. Every once in a while, Saquon's going to break one off. But if your running back toting the football is the guy that you're banking on to get your chunk plays, that's not a real good thing. We did see the one Eagle loss this year, when Jalen Hurts started to the Commanders, who did just that to the Eagles. First downed them to death. Just moved the ball down the field and converted on way too many third downs, and were able to take time off the clock and finish and get touchdowns. Does that concern you, that there have been games this year where the Eagles have been the better team with the more talent out there, yet couldn't get off the field on a third down?
Not particularly for this reason. Yeah, they couldn't get off the field. They had a bad third down day against Washington, but you had to combine that with the 4 turnovers. In other words, if they had the bad third down day and they turned it over once or twice, and I was talking to one of the Eagles coaches about this, not even a clean game. You did it once or twice, they win that game relatively easily. Even the way they played, you can't turn it over 4 times. So there's no doubt from the Giants' perspective, that's what they want to do, right? They just came off a game where they had I think people realize their defense, Minnesota's offense was pretty good for the majority of that game. They moved the ball, but they had that 19-play drive that took 11 minutes. They shortened the game, and they were able to not only shorten the game, they didn't settle for field goals. They scored touchdowns. That's how the Giants want to play this game as well. They want to shorten the game. They want to get those first downs. But even if they're capable of doing that, even if they do it, they're capable of doing it. Even if they do it, if the Eagles don't turn it over 4 times on top of it, they're going to be just fine. Now, they've done it. They did it once with Jalen. They did it once with Gardner Minshew. So you can kind of throw that out of the equation. But they have done it. I mean, they're 14-1 with Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. And the one loss, they had the 4 turnovers. And as you said, they had a bad third down day on top of it. A lot of things. The Eagles coaches argue they're 15-0 with Jalen Hurts because they beat themselves. And to be honest, they did beat themselves. So could they beat themselves again? Sure. Anything can happen in the NFL. We're in the playoffs. These are all good teams. Even the Giants have good players. Every team in the NFL has good players. You can always talk yourself into things. But 14-1, that's pretty good odds. 14 out of 15. I don't think they're going to beat themselves at home against the New York Giants. But we'll see.
Do me a favor. Refresh my memory. The 4 turnovers that day. The Quez hit from behind, getting up after he caught the ball fumble. The aborted
now you're really
Devonta
going
Smith
back. Oof.
at the goal line, final play, trying to lateral it 27 times.
Yeah.
The interception that A.J. Brown had his hands on, he couldn't fight the ball away from the Commander's defender. What was the other turnover? I'm zotzing out on that. I shouldn't. I should remember all four of them, and I can only remember three of them right now off the top of
Well,
my
you
head.
got a better memory than me. That was weak. I can look it up. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I remember because it was three turnovers and then that whole AJ thing, and it certainly affected the final score because the Skins picked the ball up. Excuse me. The Commanders picked the ball up and took it into the end zone, and that did count as a quote-unquote turnover, but they had three to that point, and I remember the two, AJ and Quez, and I can't remember what the other one was.
Yeah, so it was 2 interceptions. So you had 2 for Dallas. Oh, the face mask, Dallas Goddard fumble. So yeah, that was bad luck as well, because obviously that should have been a penalty. That play got injured on. All kinds of bad things happened on that play. But sometimes how the cookie crumbles. Now, I remember Jason Kelsey talking about that play and, calling it, to his credit on his podcast, calling it a loser mentality. You can't blame that for the loss, but that was a bad break. No doubt about it. And those things kind of happen. So, if you think about all the parts that had to align for the Washington Commanders to win that game, 15 out of 15 would be nice, but 14 out of 15 is pretty good.
14-1 and 14-1. That's pretty damn good. You're exactly right. And that loss against the Commanders. Now I'm going to raise the ire of the Eagle fans because I'm going to challenge one of their star players. When Gardner Minshew threw those interceptions against the Cowboys, filling in for Jalen Hurts, and Quez Watkins couldn't come down with the ball in the middle of the field, a lot of people put 98% of the blame on Quez Watkins and gave Gardner Minshew basically a pass when he tried to throw it into tight coverage against a pretty good defender, and Quez wasn't strong enough to rip the ball out. I put a good chunk of the blame on Gardner Minshew as well. When A.J. Brown had his hands on that ball in the Commander game, and he is supposed to be the swole Batman, and he can't pull it away from a Washington defender, nobody said anything. Why? Because he's A.J. Brown. But Quez Watkins is only Quez Watkins, so let's heap all the blame on Quez Watkins. No, it's on the quarterback as well. And that particular play, it was kind of like we don't want to give blame to anybody because we don't want to give blame to the quarterback. Time was undefeated.
Yeah, you have a little more deference if you're AJ Brown than Quez Watkins.
A little bit, yeah.
The bigger play with AJ Brown, I think people got on him. The love of the game route against the Saints that turned it in pick 6. But I talked to the coaches about both games. Look, that it's not, what did you say, 98% on Quez Watkins, but it's more than 50% on Quez Watkins. You got to fight for that ball, got to fight for your quarterback. And in AJ's case, they would have liked him to run that route a little bit harder, even though he knew what was coming. But that was 95% on the quarterback. So that's part of it as well. But nobody's perfect. Darius Slay gets this a lot too because he hasn't played as well, and he was in coverage on the Galladay play. Let's use that as an example. I mean, these guys are good. Marshawn Lattimore, stinking good player.
True.
Really good player. All pro level player when he's healthy. And he was tipped off. He knew what was coming. He made a great play. Kenny Galladay made a great catch. Not as great as a player, but that kind of tells you, look, these are NFL players. And if they're given an opportunity, they can make plays. The consistency of somebody like A.J. Brown throughout the season, that's why you get deference. He's a star player. He's a legitimate star player. That's why you get some deference.
And maybe, just maybe, this is a week where the star player comes up big for the Philadelphia Eagles. No bigger spot than the playoffs, and this is the Eagles' first playoff game because they earned the bye and hopefully took advantage of it and got a little bit healthier as the week went on. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald with the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We are hoping to hear from one Les Bowen, veteran beat writer for for several different outlets. I've been covering the Eagles for a very long time. Maybe less overslept. We'll hopefully get less up and rocking and rolling and on with us coming up in the next couple of minutes. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. You got Mac and Mac here on Bird.